While the surgery will save your life, you will be permanently blind afterward. And if you don't undergo it, you will die within a month. He looked at her face, kissed her as tears rolled down their cheeks, and then he closed his eyes. He was now ready to go blind. Suddenly, the door burst open. David Makori was a man who lived without caring about any consequences. He loved good things, and good things loved him right back. He swam on thrill and chaos, just like a lost fish in polluted waters, making reckless choices. Late night gambling, wild parties, and endless out-of-town adventures that always put his wife and son on the periphery of his life. They never mattered. Though his family loved him deeply, David didn't see it at all. He was engulfed in his own pleasures, living every day like there was no tomorrow. One day, while returning from yet another wild night out, David began to notice something strange with his vision. He dismissed it, attributing it to tiredness. But as days passed, the blurriness worsened and he began seeing dark spots. He couldn't read a book or watch TV for long. Concerned, his wife, Emma, urged him to see a doctor. The following day, he woke up early in the morning and went for eye checkup. After a series of tests in the lab, finally the results were ready. "David," the doctor said, "you have a severe degenerative eye disease. You need immediate surgery to prevent the disease from spreading, but there is a huge complication. While the surgery will save your life, you will be permanently blind afterward. And if you don't undergo it, the disease will advance and you will die within a month." David felt the walls of the hospital closing in. Blindness, death, these were two unthinkable choices and he wasn't ready for any of them. Things were going so fast. He needed time to process all this. "I need a day," he said, his voice full of sadness as he cried. "I need just one day to see the things that I truly, truly love." The doctor nodded. "You have one day. After that, we need to proceed immediately with the surgery." David left the hospital in a daze, every thought a hurricane of regret and fear. He knew what he had to do with his final hours of sight. From the hospital, he went straight home to his wife, Emma. She had been by his side through everything, despite all the times he had failed to appreciate her. For years, he had neglected her in his pursuit of selfish desires, leaving her waiting, always understanding, never complaining. Now, as he stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching her read, he realized how much he had taken her for granted. The love of his youth, the woman he had promised to stick with, was looking lonely, tired, and pale. Because he wasn't always there for her, she found solace in reading books, at least to keep her mind away from her husband who had gone astray. David walked over to her, took her hand, and sat beside her in silence. For 2 hours, he stared at her, memorizing the curves of her face, the warmth of her eyes. He had missed her smile, which softened everything. It was gone, and in its place, a hard face which was growing old so fast due to the pressures of life and marriage. He reached out and touched her cheek gently, tracing the lines that had formed over the years. Remorse filled his chest like a heavy stone. "I'm sorry," he cried, his voice breaking, "for all the time I wasted. I should have spent it with you, my love. I'm sorry I took you for granted." Emma's eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed his hand, understanding him in a way that only she could. But David could see the pain in her eyes, the pain of years lost that they could never get back, the pain of a woman who has fought for years to keep her marriage, the pain of a woman who has seen it all but still stood strong. Afterward, He called his son, Jack, who had grown distant over the years as David became more engrossed in his own world. Jack arrived reluctantly, his face hard, but David didn't care. All he wanted was to be near his son. He stared at his son for 30 minutes, realizing how much he had missed. Jack had grown into a man without him noticing, and now he was seeing him, truly seeing him for the last time. He had failed him. When Jack was looking for a father figure, David was out there admiring beautiful women with figure 8. He hoped and prayed that his son won't end up being just like him. "I'm sorry, I wasn't there," David said, his voice trembling. Jack said nothing, but the tension between them softened slightly as he left. David's next stop was the village where he had grown up. It had been 3 years since he had visited his mother, despite her constant calls. The guilt weighed on him as he walked up to her house, unsure of what to say. When she opened the door, the sight of her frail figure nearly broke him. Her wrinkles were deeper, her movements slower. He had missed so much. The woman who had sacrificed everything to take care of him when he was young was now struggling to take care of herself in old age. He had failed her. He sat beside her and wept, the realization of his neglect washing over him in huge waves, almost drowning in himself. "I should have come home more," he cried uncontrollably. "I should have been here, Mama. Mama, please forgive me. I'm sorry." She patted his back softly, saying nothing, but the sadness in her eyes was clear. She was relieved that her son had finally come back to his senses. Before the day ended, David made his way to the hill that overlooked the village, the place where he used to play as a child. It was where he had learned to dream, where he had felt invincible. Standing there now, he felt small and overwhelmed, watching the sun slowly sink behind the horizon. The village below him was alive with the hum of life, and for the first time, he wished he had spent more time with the people who loved him. Kneeling on the grass, David did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He prayed. The words came haltingly at first, then poured out of him like a flood. He spoke to God as if he was seated right there beside him, begging for forgiveness, for peace, for a second chance. The sun disappeared, and with it, David's final moments of sight were slipping away. He headed back to the hospital, his heart heavy but ready to start a new life of blindness, ready to embrace what destiny had punished him with for being a bad man, and he deserved it. Although there was a silver lining to all this, initially his heart was blind and eyes could see, but now his eyes were blind but his heart could see. At least he hadn't lost it all, he comforted himself. The operating room was sterile and cold. Everything was prepared for the surgery that would render him blind but alive. David had requested the doctors to allow his wife to be around before the surgery. He wanted her to be the last thing he sees before going blind. He was drowning in the guilt of neglecting her. He looked at her face, kissed her as tears rolled down their cheeks, and then he closed his eyes immediately. He was now ready to go blind. The surgeon wiped David's eyes to remove any dirt and sterilize them before starting the operation. Suddenly, the door burst open. A senior doctor rushed in, his face pale and frantic. "Stop! Stop everything!" he shouted. The medical team froze, confusion spreading across their faces. "There's been a terrible mistake," the doctor said, breathless. "We mixed up the specimens. David, you don't have the disease. You are healthy. All you have is a minor allergy to too much light, especially disco lights." David's heart stopped. The room spun as the doctor's words sank in. "No surgery," the doctor said. You are not going blind, David. You're fine. David sat up, shock and disbelief washing over him. He wasn't dying. He wasn't going blind. He had a second chance, a totally unexpected miracle. Tears filled his eyes as he realized what this meant. It meant that he would see his wife, his son, and his mother again. He could live, but this time he would live differently. Walking out of the hospital with the love of his life by his side, the world seemed brighter and clearer. David knew that he wouldn't waste another moment. His eyes, once destined for darkness, had been opened in more ways than one. From that day forward, he became a man who cherished his family, spent time with those he loved, and lived with the profound knowledge that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. This time, he would cherish every moment, every sight, every person he had neglected. He had been given a gift, and he would not waste it. It wasn't blindness that had opened David's eyes. It was love, and he vowed never to look away again. Thank you for watching this story up to this very end. What have we learned from this? We as human beings spend so much time chasing earthly pleasures like money, women, men, love, etc., etc. But we forget the most important things in our lives, the core reason as to why we exist. So today I'm giving you a challenge. Ask yourself, when was the last time you visited your parents? When was the last time you told your partner you love them? When was the last time you spent time with your kids? When was the last time you took your family out to have fun? Have you ever checked on your childhood best friend to know how they are doing? Do you know the name of your neighbors? As much as we are chasing the bag, let's not forget what matters the most in our lives. If you love this story, kindly share, like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to click on the notification bell so that you get notified when I post a new story. Bye bye, till next time.